Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone and welcome to On the House, the Household Management Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Yastra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin. Hi everyone and welcome to our very special New Year's episode on the House. Today we're talking to Casey Wise, who is a clinical nutritionist, about sustainable cooking tips for the new year. Hi, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to, learn some new cooking tips that we can apply for next year.
Yeah,
or this
absolutely.
year. But first of all, I'd like to get to know you a bit better. So do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Casey Wise. I am a clinical nutritionist based in Brisbane, Queensland. I studied at Endeavour College of Natural Health. So I have a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics. And I practice clinically, specializing mainly in the areas of gut health and autoimmune disease. And I'm particularly interested in the correlation between those two. So really fascinating area.
And I think that's kind of important for us to talk about today because, New Year's, I feel like, people have some resolutions that they want to, get some health things sorted, but also it's a time that we eat with family and lots of family have different dietary needs. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said, people do go into the new year with those fresh goals and a fresh perspective about how they want to eat and how they want to exercise moving into the new year. And part of my clinical practice is really emphasizing how we can eat sustainably and make it as nutritionally dense as possible while still doing the best we can for ourselves, for our families, for the planet. So, yeah.
Not just cooking for ourselves, but also cooking for the planet.
That's right. As much as we can. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. But before we do get more into this topic, we like to do a section called Have You Met Casey, where we get to know you through some of your favorite things. So first thing I'd like to know is, what is your favorite book?
Such a tough question. I like many different kind of styles, fiction, nonfiction, but if I had to choose one book that I would recommend to everyone, just as a general read, it's probably The Alchemist. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's by Paulo Coelho. Apologies if I pronounce that incorrectly, but it's just such a beautiful, timeless story about love and spirituality and destiny and following your dreams. And I read it probably once a year, and every time I do, I just feel really inspired and uplifted, and it really helps me to connect with, okay, who am I? What is my purpose? How do I want to best serve people in the world? So yeah, I really, really love that book, and I would recommend it to everyone. I also love some health kind of related ones that I'm reading lately. One is called The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. It's a really, really fascinating perspective on chronic illness and mental health and the kind of epidemic that we have with those issues in the Western world. And it really, argues for a more holistic approach to healthcare. So I'm really enjoying diving into that and all the science in that book at the moment.
Interesting. I know my partner has enjoyed their books before as well, so maybe I'll have to have a look at that. More of their books.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you for those recommendations.
You're welcome.
And have you watched any documentaries recently that you enjoyed?
I have one that I watched recently on Netflix. Yeah, it's actually like a docu-series, but it's called Live to 100, The Secrets of the Blue Zones. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the blue zones, but these are specific geographical areas that they've identified in the world as having the highest proportion of centenarians and people that are living healthily into old age. Mm-hmm. So I think they've identified 5 or 6 blue zones. For example, one of them is Okinawa in Japan. The other one is Sardinia in Italy. And basically it's a 5-part series where the interviewer goes there and is hoping to find out the secrets of longevity. And he talks to a lot of people who are well into their 100s, they're like 105, still kicking, even like people into their 80s and 90s as well. And he's asking them a lot about health. He's like asking them a lot about nutrition, exercise, but also about what else they think is contributing to their health and longevity. And I think the most important message that comes out of that documentary is, yes, health, nutrition, exercise is so important, but so is a sense of purpose, so is a sense of community, so is a sense of kind of faith and hope. And yeah, it was just a really, really fascinating series on Netflix. So if you guys have time to watch it, I absolutely recommend it.
Great, thank you. I do have maybe an odd question. Is it called blue zones because they're by the sea?
That's what I originally thought. However, the blue zones, the name was given to the blue zones by this scientist or the investigator who first started looking into these particular areas. And when he was doing his research, he was blotting on the paper with a blue highlighter. Yeah. Okay. So when he was doing the studies of, this little group here seems to be living into their hundreds, it explains this in the documentary, by the way. Okay. He was blotting it on the paper with a blue highlighter.
Okay.
And hence they gave the nickname the Blue Zones. There's also a couple of TED Talks as well on this particular topic on the Blue Zones. And it's just amazing seeing the way that those people live and how sustainably they live. Often these communities are kind of living off the land. They're farming themselves. They're eating that kind of farm to table approach. And they're moving around. They're interacting with other people. They have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose that kind of keeps them going well into old age. So really fascinating.
Great. Thank you so much. And are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
I am. Again, the type of podcast that I listen to does vary on the day. Sometimes I'm looking for something a bit more spiritual, motivational, other times more, I guess, science heavy. But some of my favorite health and science related ones are probably Huberman Lab by Andrew Huberman, the FX Medicine podcast, which has a bunch of different speakers and guests that contribute to that. There's a really great one on Spotify called Maintenance Phase, which again is kind of very health related. They do a lot of debunking of current health myths and bad science, which I absolutely love. And in relation to, I guess, sustainability and low tox living, there's a really great podcast called Low Tox Life as well. And Alex, who runs that, has a lot of different guests on, and she gives a lot of tips, really easy to integrate tips on how to create more sustainability and more environmentally friendly practices in your own home. So they would probably be some of my go-tos. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I do love Maintenance Phase.
Yes, it's a relatively new one. I think they only started throughout COVID, 2020.
Yeah, I think so. Great.
Yeah, really good.
But I know that he also does, I forgot his name, but he also used to do another podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that one as well. So
he does one called If Books Could Kill.
Yeah.
Is that one you're thinking of? Yeah.
No,
with
the
a
other
guy
one,
named...
what's the other one called? It's You're Wrong About This.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just the way they're so funny and the way that they deliver it and really kind of dig into the science and the methodology. And it's amazing. Some of the things they've spoken about on there, we've been talking about for years, and we just take that as fact and roll with it. And in reality, sometimes there's not even any evidence to support it whatsoever. So I absolutely love that one. Yeah.
I mostly just like laughing at the like really bad diet books.
Yeah. Yeah, they pull a lot of really great diet books from like the 80s.
Yeah.
And yeah, just some of the absolute wild recipes, the like level of calorie restriction, so intense. So we really have come quite a way in terms of how we think about health, thankfully. And I love it when they do a deep dive into those. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. Thank you for those recommendations. And do you have a role model?
Yeah, and I have a few different role models, like some in business, some in my own personal life. But one that really sticks out is probably my grandfather. So he is well into his 80s now, and he's been through a lot of change, a lot of adversity in his life. And I'm currently working with him on some health issues that he's having. And I so admire the way that at his age, he's still so open, he's still so willing to learn. Nothing's too much of a challenge. He's like, yeah, I'm really interested in that. I'll implement that. I'll give that a go. And he doesn't let his age limit him or define him. He's 80, but he's, in his words, feeling the best he's ever felt, and he really loves to squeeze the absolute most out of life. And yeah, I hope I can continue to do that well into my old age as well. So he's a big role model for me, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it also shows, there's this idea that once you get to a certain age, you're set in your ways, you're not going to change. And it does show that
absolutely
you don't have to be like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And have you done any courses that have inspired you?
Well, aside from my big nutrition degree, which took about 4 years, that was very inspiring, very transformative for my own health in particular, and for my family's health. I really learned a lot that I could integrate into my own life and into my family's life. But I was actually looking on your website and at the courses that you guys have in development at the moment, and I saw that you are developing some around like gratitude and emotional intelligence, and particularly gratitude is something that I've implemented into my own daily routine over the last few years, and that's completely inspired me and changed my life and my outlook and perspective. And so I really think when that course is available, that's going to be really inspiring to a lot of people, because just changing your mindset and perception and finding the good in your day, despite the negatives, despite the challenges, I personally believe it's one of the most important things you can do for your health.
Yeah, I have heard that gratitude is really important for mental health. So I'm really looking forward to our courses to be produced. I've had a sneak peek at some of them, but it's a bit different when you're a student getting to learn from them. So yeah, so watch this space.
Yeah, watch this space for sure.
Thank you. So with our topic today, I like to start off with some definitions so that, we're all starting from the same point. We know what we're talking about. So the first thing that I'd like to know is, how do you define household management?
Yes, I think it could be defined in a few different ways. I guess the way I see it is developing routines and strategies around the daily tasks of the household. So this could include things like cooking, cleaning, home maintenance, financial planning, etc. And making sure that, again, you have those routines, you have those strategies, whether you're single and living alone or whether you are part of a larger household and you have a family, creating those so that your household can run more smoothly and efficiently. And I think what this does is it reduces stress. It allows you to spend more time doing what you value and enjoy and love in life, whether that's, spending time with your family or you name it. Having kind of times and procedures set to do things, it just reduces that unnecessary stress. It reduces unnecessary waste. It can reduce unnecessary spending. So I guess that's how I would define it, making sure those procedures are in place. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds similar to, I think, what our topic's going to be today, which is sustainable cooking. So do you mind explaining what that is?
Yes, of course. So the most simple definition, I think, would just be cooking with the earth and the environment in mind. So that would involve, from start to finish. So from purchasing ingredients to cooking techniques. So we're looking at ingredients, techniques, practices that are aiming to minimize environmental impact, reduce waste, and also where possible, support local communities. I think that would be the most well-rounded, broad definition of sustainable cooking.
So there's certainly a lot of different aspects to sustainable cooking. It's not just, maybe, making sure everything's plant-based or making sure everything's organic, but certainly, a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, our topic today is, for the new year. So how can we start integrating this into maybe New Year's resolutions?
Yes. Yeah, great question. I think, so if we're starting at the beginning, we're looking at food shopping. We're looking at groceries. So the most basic place to start, I think, is helping people become more informed around where their food is coming from. So when you are purchasing ingredients, wherever that may be, whether it's the supermarket, whether it's a health food store, whether it's the local markets, whether it's a farmer, however you buy and purchase those ingredients, trying your best to understand, what's the country of origin that ingredient is coming from, how is it processed, how is it getting to be on the shelf or on display. I think that's kind of step one. Obviously, if you are shopping at a farmer or maybe a local market, it might be easier to find out that information. So I do encourage people, if those sorts of options are available to them. And if you do live in a metro area, there's normally a local produce market that is close to you that you could look up. And just, go and meet the producer, go and meet the farmer, and ask, how does it get here today? What's your process? Is it organic? Is it pesticide free? How is it grown? What do you feed your animals? These sorts of questions are really important to ask. If, a local market or talking to a local farmer is not available and you shop at a conventional supermarket, that's also okay. But have a look if you can find out the supplier, and don't be afraid to shoot them off an email or contact them and just ask a few more questions around where those ingredients are coming from and how they're being produced. And you'll always see on the back whether something is Australian grown and made or whether it is imported. And if you are making a decision to consume something that is imported, understanding the environmental costs that may have. If we're importing particularly fresh produce from overseas, well, we're taking into account all of those transportation costs, taking into account all of the energy and resources that it takes to get those ingredients to Australia on our produce shelves. So I think it's not just taking things for granted, like here it is in my trolley and happy days, not asking questions. Really educating yourself around that is probably step one. And then step two is, how are you going to prepare it at home? How am I going to prepare this piece of meat, for example, and make sure I'm not cutting things off and throwing it away? How can I use the whole product? How can I use the broccoli stem instead of chopping off the florets and then throwing the whole stem away? Not only are we losing nutrients, but we're increasing our food waste. So it's kind of taking these small steps. And New Year is a great time to start, but also today, in the lead up to the holidays, we traditionally around this time are eating a lot more, we're consuming a lot more. And it's a very challenging time of year to keep our sustainable practices going. So if you can get through the holiday period with sustainability in mind, you're going to really be set up in a healthy way to keep that going into the new year. And particularly this holiday period, when you look at the stats on the amount of waste and how much household waste increases over the holiday period, you'd be shocked. And so really, really important right now, coming into Christmas, coming into New Year, to start implementing some of this.
So yeah, I mean, the Christmas, New Year time, even, a little bit later on in the year, we have, Lunar New Year, things like that. How can we, we have big festivals, lots of presents, lots of food. How can we start to, I think it's one thing to say, I'm going to be more sustainable during my everyday life. I'll go to the supermarket and I'll, look at where the food's from. But Christmas time, New Year's, where I need this, I need that. I want the best produce. I want, this exotic thing for my dinner. How do you, I guess, weigh those things, and how do you make sure that you are prioritizing sustainability?
Great questions. And so right, what you touched on there, like we're looking beyond food in this scenario as well. The food is one portion, but we're also looking at gift giving. We're looking at decorations. We're looking at all of this, which is contributing to waste. Like wrapping paper, for one, is just, it gets put on a present, it gets ripped straight up, and then it gets put in the bin. Like that's just not sustainable by any definition of the word. But I guess if we're bringing it back to more of a food context, this stat is not specific to food, but overall household waste in Australia increases by about 30% over the household period. And that is from things like decorations, from wrapping paper, from gifts, unwanted gifts being thrown away, from food waste, bottle waste, all of this. So yeah, having that stat in mind, I think, wow, 30% over just this, 1 month period. That's huge. I think a huge element of it, as you were touching on, is like, I want this and I want that. A lot of it does come down to that mindset of understanding that it's a very stressful time of year. It's a very emotional time of year. It can be a very anxiety-inducing time of year. And, societal pressures and marketing is kind of designed to encourage this kind of frenzy and stress to get us to buy more and to, overconsume and overindulge. And it also kind of fosters a bit of this scarcity mindset of if I don't stock up now, if I'm not the first to the shops, if I'm not buying it all, then there's going to be none left and I'm going to miss out, I'm going to miss out, I'm going to miss out. So I think foundationally, it's really acknowledging, okay, there is a lot of external pressure here. Can I remain calm? can I remain grounded and stick to my plan and only buy what I need and not buy into the pressure of I need more. So I guess, bringing that back to more of a food context. I think one of the most important things if you are hosting a gathering, if you're the one that's hosting family Christmas or, Lunar New Year or whatever you are hosting, as early as possible, get an accurate number of how many people are going to be attending and cater sensibly to that. I think more often than not, we over-cater because, again, it's that scarcity mindset of there's not going to be enough, we're going to run out of food, people are going to go hungry, blah, blah, blah. But again, coming back to our sensible, grounded headspace of, no, I've got this many people, this is going to be enough, I'm serving this as mains, I'm serving this as sides, I'm serving this as dessert, it's going to be plenty. And also, if you're doing an arrangement, I know this is the case for my own family Christmas where everyone brings a plate, planning ahead, creating that group chat so that you know what everybody is bringing and making sure that there's not double ups, because there's nothing worse than 4 people bringing a side of potatoes and then the potatoes go to waste, or 3 people bring a pavlova and then it is too much. So if you are having a situation where everyone brings a plate, try and plan in advance so that everyone is bringing something different so things aren't overlapping and all of the food is getting eaten. And I suppose the next step to that is if there are leftovers, what do we do with them? Is that what you'd like me to chat about?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So again, speaking mainly from my own personal experience, what do we do with leftovers? First point of call, I always send my guests home with food if there's too much. There's nothing worse than you having your fridge like absolutely chock-a-block with stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through all of this. So I try and send people home with a little doggy bag, which honestly people love. So by all means, send people away with food. Then you've still got leftovers. Some common things we see leftover might be, for example, a lot of people make pavlova. So things like your egg yolks are leftover a lot of the time. So always on Boxing Day, in the days after Christmas, me and my family are making omelets, frittatas, toasted sandwiches, like a lot of different things to use up the leftovers. But yeah, particularly with egg yolks, things like your omelet, frittatas, anything that you can use up those eggs. And often you can throw other things in. So maybe you've got some leftover chicken from a roast chicken. So omelet for breakfast, throwing in your chicken, throwing in leftover greens, using up the egg yolks, happy days.
Great, thank you.
Bread, another one. Really great recipe is bread and butter pudding, which can help you use up bread, cream, custard, milk, those sorts of things. So slicing the bread up, putting in some dried fruit, and you essentially like bake it in the oven so it's a little pudding and serve it with custard. That's another really great idea. And probably something I'd like to experiment with this year is making a bone broth with like a leftover chicken carcass, for example. A lot of my colleagues do this, and I'm really fascinated by it. And it's so like nutrient dense. So that's something that I'm personally going to look at implementing. But essentially you take the whole carcass from a roast chicken, can even use up the lemons and that sort of thing that you may have used to roast it. And you're essentially cooking down the bones with water, maybe a little bit of apple cider, salt and pepper, and you're letting that slow cook for like 10 to 12 hours. And then all of a sudden you've got a really beautiful nutrient dense broth that's minimizing waste, and you're getting all the beautiful nutrients from the bones. And it's really, really great. You're getting the collagen. It's really great for the gut, nourishing the gut lining. It's got a whole host of benefits. So that's something that I'm yet to try myself, but I'm determined to give it a go this year.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So I made chicken soup the other day because and it was the first time I've ever made it because I made a roast chicken. I don't do that very often. And I was like, I'm going to be sustainable. I'm going to use the whole chicken this time.
Yeah. Nice.
And I made a chicken soup and I only boiled it for about 2 hours. And so is the difference between like a chicken stock or a chicken broth and a chicken soup what you put in it? Is it how long you cook it? Or did I essentially make a chicken broth?
So did you just used the carcass, or did you use the breast and the meat of the chicken as well?
I used just the chicken carcass, and I didn't shred it that much, but there wasn't much meat left on it. But I also used a whole bunch of veggies.
But it was mainly the carcass.
Yeah.
So traditionally a bone broth doesn't have veggies and things added. It might have like a little bit of onion, a little bit of garlic to kind of flavor it. But certainly I think the big difference is in the cooking time. So letting it kind of slow boil for a period of like 10 to 12 hours is helping it to reduce down a little bit. You're actually like leaching a lot of the nutrients out of the bone. And I mean, I suppose like texturally, it's probably quite similar. It's like it's like a clear liquid that you drink or, slurp on. But I think, it's really just the difference in that cooking time. And again, broth traditionally is just the bones, a little bit of something to flavor it, but not any meat, not any extra added veg. It's pretty... I think people actually cook it often longer than like 10 to 12 hours as well. Sometimes they let it go for 24 hours and then are straining it out. So you're essentially straining out the carcass and then just using the liquid that you're getting out of that. So again, I'm not an expert on this topic. I'm very interested in trying myself this year, but I've seen so many of my colleagues do it, and it just seems like such a beautiful way to use that up. So good on you for giving that a try.
Thank you. I'm going to have to give it a go and see if I can do it for 12 hours or something now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very low heat, and you just let it cook down is my understanding.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I might wait till winter though.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, very different in Australia in summer, right? It's like, it's a great idea, but the thought of cooking down a hot broth.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my colleagues as well do cook it down and use it more of a stock. And so rather than maybe consuming it all once it's ready, they freeze it in like little ice cube trays. Again, that's another really sustainable way of making sure you use it all up. But freezing it in little ice cube trays, and then next time you're making a recipe that calls for a stock or a broth, you can just throw that in. And in general, I love the freezer. Please utilize your freezer to its full capacity, because pretty much anything, if it's coming up to date, it can be frozen. If you cook something you've made too much, freeze it. You can defrost it again. I think people often really underutilize their freezer. And I know for myself, like, I do not have a spare inch in there. It's just got everything that it can fit. So absolutely use up your freezer space and your fridge space as well over this holiday period.
Do you have any tips on so I always have trouble. I put things in the freezer and then I forget about them.
Well, I think that's a common problem with people with the fridge as well. And actually, you've just reminded me of kind of another number one tip for people is throughout the holiday period, constantly monitor and rearrange your fridge and freezer. I think a big part of the problem is that people put things in there and then let it get pushed to the back, whether that's like a raw ingredient or whether that's something that's been prepared and they've pushed it to the back. and they forget it's there. So something that me and my family really implement is in the lead up to Christmas Day and then after Christmas, constantly going through and rotating our fridge. So pulling things to the front, knowing what's there, knowing what needs to be eaten, knowing what needs to be used up, particularly when it comes to raw ingredients. There's nothing worse than like finding an old cucumber rotting and going moldy in the back. Just using the compartments of your fridge really clearly, labeling if you need to. I know that Oz Harvest, who are one of the big food collectors and charities in Australia that collect produce from the supermarkets and that sort of thing, they actually give away fridge tape, and it's like yellow and black, like almost like hazard tape that you can grab, and you can, mark out little things, little compartments in your fridge, like this needs to be eaten today. And they really encourage you to do that over the holiday period, to just make sure that if you can visibly see what needs to be used up, you're more inclined to do it rather than pulling something out of the fridge a week later and it's bad and you've got to toss it. So having that visibility is really important.
And I've also been in the situation where, you unearth this very, very frozen ham from, was it Christmas this year or was it Christmas last year?
Totally. I think we've all been there. Absolutely. And particularly with the freezer, you might have things in there for a year. So, ham's actually a really easy one to use up. Things like pea and ham soup. Again, I mentioned toasties. That's a really great one. I think me and my family come New Year's are so sick of eating toasted sandwiches and jaffles because every day it's like ham, cheese, toasty for lunch. Okay, yeah, we got to use more ham. So again, omelette, you can make, with old potatoes and ham, things like called bubble and squeak, which is basically just like a big hash of like chopped up ham, potatoes, veggies. However you want to use it up, there's many ways, but yeah, try and use it up as much as you can. Then if you can't, pop it in the freezer, resurrect it, maybe in winter when it's time for pea and ham soup again.
Yep.
That's great.
Yes, when you're finally ready to like turn the oven on.
Yes.
Then you can make the pea and ham soup.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you're also a nutritionist. So I'd like to know, do you have any nutritional tips for, like holiday meals or, maybe habits that we can get into for the new year?
Yeah, of course. This is my favorite topic to talk about. But yeah, I guess as a nutritionist, firstly, I encourage people to try and go into the holiday season with a really healthy mindset around food. Again, as I mentioned before, it can be a really overwhelming, emotional, like panicky time for a lot of people. And particularly a lot of people might be concerned about overeating, overindulging, and might be going into things with a very restrictive mindset around food, which can be very tricky to break for a lot of people. And it's quite a sensitive thing. But where possible, I try and encourage people to enjoy themselves. Our holidays come around once a year, and it's a really sad thing to feel isolated from your family or from your friends because you're not able to partake in the foods that they're enjoying. So that's a really key thing I want to emphasize, is that please enjoy yourself, please eat freely, and don't buy into all the crazy like detox, you need to detox and you need to do this, you need to do that. No, it's a holiday, enjoy yourself. That being said, my biggest nutritional tips are to make sure that your meals are macro balanced. So macronutrient balanced, meaning we want to have a healthy serve where possible of protein, carbs, and fats. So normally getting, the protein And the carbs at Christmas time is pretty easy for a lot of people. There's normally a beautiful meat or like a vegetarian protein source on offer. And, normally lots of potatoes, lots of other beautiful carbohydrate sources, salads and things. But healthy fats can be something that people overlook. So there's lots of beautiful healthy fat sources. But, if you're having a salad, make sure you have it with a beautiful big drizzle of like extra virgin olive oil to make sure your healthy fats are in there. What about beautiful nuts and seeds and things like that? If you're making a salad, please throw all of those in to make sure that it's as nutritionally balanced as possible. So that would be my tip. Just when you're looking at your plate, make sure that it's as macronutrient balanced as possible, and try and make it as colorful as possible as well. If you're looking down at your plate and it's looking all brown and white and beige, that's normally an indication that it's not, overflowing with nutrients. So when food is colorful, it means that it's rich in all of the beautiful phytonutrients and antioxidants that our body needs. So you really want to eat the rainbow. You want to be looking down and being like, look at this beautiful, colorful salad I've got here with some beautiful ham or chicken or turkey. And then I've got my healthy fat sources as well. So eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow is what I always encourage as a nutritionist at this time. And I think that's something really easy for people to remember as well, just as much color as you can.
And I mean, possibly this is something that you're going to disagree with. Not disagree, but, I feel like, often we'll go through Christmas and we'll say, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And, you'll eat the beige plates and the chocolate cake and a bit too much of everything. And then afterwards, you hit New Year and you're like, oh, I ate so badly. I need to make up for it. Do you have any tips for starting the new year? Or should we just say it's okay and, I'll be okay?
I'm always a huge advocate for it's going to be okay, because we're talking about sustainable tips, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the pattern that we see every new year is that people go from this extreme of overindulgence to the other extreme of like extreme restriction as soon as the new year hits, right? And what inevitably happens is we end up on this yo-yo wheel of binge restriction, which, as a nutritionist is advocating for sustainability and more holistic health, I'm trying to get people out of that cycle, which is why, firstly, giving yourself grace and saying, I did that, but you know what? It's okay. I've got these few tips that I'm implementing, and I'm going to really slowly and steadily get back on track. Or alternatively, just incorporating those little things throughout the holiday period, so that you aren't feeling so bad about what you've eaten. Just make sure you're getting out and at least going for a walk every day. Getting out in nature is so important. Just whatever you can do throughout the holiday period, so it's not this like I'm absolutely writing myself off and waiting for the 1st of January to change my whole life. Try and stay centered, try and stay grounded and secure within yourself. If you do have healthy habits already set up, try and keep those going as much as you possibly can until the new year. And if not, it's okay. We slowly build again, but I try and get people out of this, like these extreme fluctuations, because what we want is sustainable change ultimately. And that sounds like a bit of like a woo-woo answer, because people are just like, I want to know what to do. Tell me the diet. But often that sort of thinking can do more harm than good. So yeah, that's my opinion on the matter.
Thank you, because I think that I grew up with sort of that kind of mindset from my parents, Christmas is all
so many
about
people
gravy and then New Year's, time to diet.
Well, and not only from maybe our intimate family setting, I know it's something, particularly as women, maybe more so we hear, but on a broader societal level, marketing loves New Year, because as soon as you hit New Year, all of the businesses, particularly, in health, people are, have you overindulged this Christmas? Try XYZ product, or try XYZ diet plan, or try XYZ, exercise routine. There's a lot of external noise that is supporting that sort of mentality and mindset. So it's not about blaming people for being in that sort of a mindset. It's often what we've grown up hearing and understanding. But yeah, I think once you become conscious of that messaging, that can sometimes be one of the biggest steps, is like, oh, okay, I see that I'm being targeted here to want to do this. But you know what? I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I'm pretty happy. I'm centered within myself, and slow and steady. Mm-hmm. People don't want to hear slow and steady, but it's about slow and steady. It really is, if we're talking about long-term health.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to discuss before we move on to the next section?
I don't think so. Yeah? I think unless you have any other questions sustainability. I think
I've covered a lot. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I didn't mind we divert a little bit. So we're moving on to our practices and habits section.
Awesome.
What is a practice that you do to manage your own, cooking and nutrition at home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in my day-to-day life, and even leading up to the festive season, I'm a huge believer, and I encourage all of my clients to plan ahead, be organized where possible when it comes to all facets of life, cooking, eating, gift giving. Let's try and plan ahead and be as organized as possible, because when we're rushed and when we're stressed and when we have to make a decision under pressure, that's when we often overspend, overeat, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So in the context, of food, I personally always designate 1 to 2 hours on a weekend day. If you work weekends, doesn't matter which day of the week it is, can be during the week. Just designate a period of time. Maybe you can do it in less than that, but usually for me, it's like 1 to 2 hours to think ahead, plan my meals, come up with maybe some recipes that I'd like to cook for the week, and prep that so that I at least have some portions for lunch or dinner, depending on my schedule, so that when I'm really busy and there's a lot going on during the week, I've got something there, it's ready. It's ready to go. I don't have the decision fatigue of, I've had a huge day at work. What am I going to cook? Oh, I can't be bothered cooking. I'm just going to grab something on Uber Eats. And then we get into this, to this quite vicious cycle. So I wasn't always like that. I used to just kind of go to the supermarket on the weekends and aimlessly walk around being like, what am I going to eat? Let's just have a look and see what's on special, and kind of did it that way. And, there's an element of myself where I am quite creative. I do like to see if there's anything on offer, if there's anything discounted, and maybe build a meal around that. But for the most part, I like to habit stack this with, things that I enjoy on the weekend. So I read the book Atomic Habits, which talks about, trying to build a habit on top of an existing habit, and preferably something that you enjoy. So it's almost like a reward. So for me, on a Sunday morning, I have a yoga class that I love to go to. So I get up, I go to the yoga class. I really love that. I go and get a coffee, and then I come home. I'm feeling super zen and happy, and I'll sit out on my balcony with my laptop and have a think about, okay, what meals would I like to prepare this week? So I'm making it kind of a fun and enjoyable activity rather than a chore of like, I've got to sit down and plan my meals now. And I try and do it in the morning as well. So the longer I leave it in the day, the less likely I am going to actually do it. So yeah, normally this might be around like 10 a.m. on a Sunday. I'll sit down and just have a think. I'm very repetitive with my meals. I think people can sometimes feel this pressure to always have to come up with different ideas and make these really elaborate, crazy meals. If you love doing that, go for it. But for me, I've got a rotation of meals that I know that I love eating. I know that they're nutritionally balanced. I know they're going to give me the energy and vitality that I need throughout the week. So I really just cycle through those. In winter, I really love to utilize my slow cooker. It's a really beautiful way to cook down your food, particularly your meat and your veggies. As you cook your meat and your veggies down, it actually allows you to absorb more of the nutrients from your meat and your veggies. And when you're eating a really beautiful, warm, nourishing meal like that, it's really great for digestion. And the beauty of a slow cooker is that you often get like 6+ meals out of a slow cooker. So whether you have a family or whether you're like me and I live on my own, that gives me so many meals out of one step of cooking. And particularly with a slow cooker, you pop it on in the morning, you don't have to do anything. And then come 6, 7 o'clock, it's ready to go. You portion up your meals. I'll freeze some, and then I'll put, enough meals for lunches or dinners for the week. And then, I'll have one for dinner or that sort of thing. So if I'm not slow cooking, because I don't really do that in summer, it's a bit too warm, I'll just cycle around the meals that I like. Normally they might be like a curry with rice, with lots of beautiful green veggies. It might be a piece of salmon and salad. It might be more of like a Mexican style thing with minced beans, anything really. I just look and I say, okay, have I got a couple of serves of veggies in this? Have I got a nice protein source? And have I got some good quality carbohydrates in there as well? Plan that out, cook that all for the week. That might get me through maybe Monday to Thursday, and at least I've got, my lunches covered or my dinners covered, or however you want to do it. And then maybe towards the end of the week, I'll do another batch of cooking again. But I encourage organization in whichever way you want to do it, in whichever way works for you. If you can at least plan and cook ahead, you're not aimlessly walking around the grocery store like I used to do. And you're not, tempted to order takeaway every night for dinner because you can't be bothered to cook. So that would probably be my main thing. My main practice.
And I do find myself, I will be like, I want to make this for dinner. And then I'll realize that all the grocery is closed. I have to go to the expensive supermarket.
That's right. So if you do it during the day, you don't get caught out with things being closed. Particularly, I'm not sure if this is the case in Melbourne, but in Queensland, things close early. So you've got to get in there before things close. And I have friends that rather than shopping at the supermarket, they would prefer to shop at a farmer's market, which are normally on a Saturday or a Sunday morning. So again, similar process. They wake up. It's something that they enjoy because they might exercise and they might go to the farmer's market. Again, grab a coffee, grab a little croissant, however you want to do it. and do their shopping for the week in a way that's really enjoyable for them. And that way they know they've got the ingredients there. They're feeling inspired. They're feeling happy. They come home, prep it all up, and it's a really enjoyable experience. So however you can do it so that it's organized, it's somewhat enjoyable, and, you feel like you're nourishing not only yourself, but, your family, if you've got kids and that sort of thing. You've got things ready for them as well. So you're not having to think about 4 people every night what you're going to cook.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experience.
That's all right. No worries.
Great. We'll just take a minute. I'll read the questions from the audience, see if we've covered everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the open mic section. That's where you get a chance to talk about something that you're passionate about. It can be related to our topic today, but it doesn't have to be. What did you want to talk about today?
Well, yes, as I mentioned at the start, my clinical practice is mainly centered around gut health and chronic illness. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd love to talk a little bit about the gut and how it connects to different systems in our body, and how we can really help prevent and reverse a lot of chronic illness by focusing on our gut health. Is that something that sounds good?
That sounds amazing.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, just a little bit of backstory about me and what got me into nutrition and health in the first place. So when I was 17 years old, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called rheumatoid arthritis, which was obviously a big shock at the time. I really didn't understand that. I just heard the word arthritis and thought, what? That's something that old people get. And it was a very confusing, very stressful time. I was very sick, finishing my last year of high school at the time and getting ready to go to university. And went to a GP, and eventually got referred to a rheumatologist, and was put on really, really high dose anti-inflammatory medications, which helped to, reduce a lot of the symptoms and somewhat got me back to like normal functioning. Just so for people that don't know about rheumatoid arthritis, it essentially affects the cartilage of your joints. So I was experiencing like extreme pain and stiffness in many of the joints in my body, so bad that sometimes I couldn't get out of bed. It was really, really affecting my daily functioning. So the medications really helped, but after probably a good decade of being on them, I knew that there was more that I could be doing for myself. And that's when I really started to dive into the world of nutrition and health. And I thought, okay, I'm going to keep taking the medications, but I want to do more. I really want to see if what I'm eating is affecting this, or if I could start incorporating some gentle exercise and how that would help. And that essentially took me on this journey of completely overhauling my diet, starting yoga as a practice, incorporating meditation, really regulating my nervous system. And I ended up going to study nutrition, as I've mentioned earlier in the podcast. And the biggest thing that I learned there was all about our gut, and how our gut functions. And I started to learn about the link between the gut and the immune system. So when we have an unhappy gut, when we've got a lot of dysbiosis happening, dysbiosis means there's like an imbalance in our gut bacteria. We might have something that we call intestinal permeability, which is essentially where our gut lining starts to erode over time and it becomes really permeable and leaky. And that causes a lot of inflammation in the gut. So what I was experiencing was a lot of food intolerances. A lot of things were really setting me off and making my joints worse. And learning about the link of healing the gut and how that affects the immune system was absolutely transformative for me. And it's something that I work with my clients with now, whatever they're presenting with, whether it is an immune disorder, whether it is skin issues, whether it's poor mental health, the list goes on. But I'm always looking at the gut first, because our gut really is the foundation of our health. When there's dysbiosis happening, it's affecting our mental health. It's affecting the function of our immune system. It's affecting our skin. Our skin is a representation of what's going on the inside. So I really consider things in that holistic perspective, and have really been able to help a lot of people really get to the root cause of what's going on for them. And so much so that for myself, I'm now medication-free for my rheumatoid and essentially symptom-free. And that's solely through working on the gut, incorporating a more nutritious diet, exercising, regulating my nervous system, and really finding a sense of purpose as well in helping others. So I feel like that was a bit of a roundabout story, but I just wanted to give people a bit of an insight into me and why I am so passionate about this area. And if anyone does want to find out more, or they're struggling with any of these sorts of conditions themselves, they can absolutely reach out, and I'd love to see how I can help.
Yeah, thank you.
Them.
And
Yeah.
if people do want to find out more about you and your work, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my business is called Wise Wellbeing. My website is www.wisewellbeingnutrition.com.au. You can find me on most social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok as wise_wellbeing. I think that's about it. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Casey Wise. Feel free. An email is wisewellbeing@gmail.com. So all pretty consistent across the board, but please feel free to reach out across any of those channels. If you want to know anything else about me and my practice, learn a little bit more about the gut and how it influences so many different aspects of our health. Or, if you're after some more sustainability tips for Christmas and the New Year as well, I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure all of those links are in our show notes. So even though it is very easy to find you, we'll make it even easier for everyone.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Thank you so much for talking with me. I learned a lot about gut health. I've learned a lot about what we can do with our leftovers and how we can be a bit more sustainable over Christmas and New Year. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
You've been listening to On the House, produced by the Household Management Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at hm.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella. Thanks for tuning in.